Get the power to do more with storable software. More automating, more control, more revenue, more time back in your day. Storable helps operators do more with the most powerful technology in self-storage. Learn more at storable.com/do more.
So introductions real quick. My name is Matt Beal. I'm a product marketing manager here at Storable. And so I'm the host of today's webinar, but my goal is to get out of the way as fast as possible because we have some really wonderful guests that I want to introduce and walk you guys through here in just a moment. So before I do that, I want to start with a little bit of context. So this webinar is actually kind of part of a bigger 3-part series of content that we've been sharing over the last month or so. And so 2 weeks ago, we released what we call a schoolable training video. And the idea of this is the intent behind these videos is to share kind of the best practices when you're configuring and using these tools. So in today's discussion, that's our CRM features of SiteLink. And so if you're kind of generally familiar with CRM, but you're not really sure of all the ins and outs or kind of that next advanced level, these videos are a perfect fit for you. And so we're going to be including these in a follow-up email later today, just by you attending the webinar, that you'll get links to those so you can check it out. But today we're excited to be hosting 2 operators for a roundtable discussion on the same topic. And so by contrast, the subject matter today is a little bit different. We're going to be talking more about how they are actively using this to solve, business challenges. What are the use cases behind these different features and how are they using it to solve challenges? And they'll also be sharing some kind of tips and tricks to help you guys get more efficient with how you use CRM. And then lastly is next Tuesday, April 27th from 1 to 1:30 p.m. Central Time. We're going to be having what we call an Ask the Expert webinar with James Renuff, who is our corporate trainer for SiteLink. Very, very knowledgeable when it comes to the SiteLink software. And so if you hear anything that the panelists today mention and you're kind of wondering, how do I go set that up? How do I configure it? How do I use it? That's a really good question to kind of write down, jot off to the side, and bring that to that webinar next week. And James is going to be spending time with each of you to walk you through, like live in SiteLink, where do you go to click what buttons to get these kinds of things set up. But without further ado, I want to jump into today's roundtable. So today's panel is going to be moderated by Jim Ferguson, Client Success Manager here at Storable. And so Jim, take it away.
All right, well, I appreciate the intro, Matt. And also this walkthrough is great because it's an opportunity to talk with these individuals of like what they use and then get to go learn from James. So I've been in self-storage for, I actually was sitting here thinking 12, 13, they merged, to be honest, but as everyone has told me is once you get in self-storage, you never leave. And I think Raheem and Christina can also nod their heads and say it's true. But throughout the years, I've gotten to know these individuals. For a little reference for the CRM aspect, Christina was actually one of the founding fathers as an operator who actually helped create the CRM function. She was one of the marketing experts in the industry, forward thinkers, and really helped us create what it is there. And then Raheem is also just a tried and true, just pushing us to actually better these systems and using these systems as well. So it's great advocates and also just really good experience from these two. But Christina, would you just give a little quick, couple seconds of who you are and a little bio?
Sure. So I am currently the founder and CEO of Fineview Marketing, but I am also an owner-operator of 2 storage properties in the Austin, Texas metro area. So I've been in the industry for almost 10 years at this point, I think. As Jim said, once you get in, it kind of sucks you in and keeps you. So started on the owner-operator side, running marketing and operations for a number of large operators. So I've been using the CRM systems for, like Jim said again, since the beginning of time with them. And so, with the owner-operator side and now the marketing company side, and we work with a lot of different owner-operators to create their CRM processes. It's one of those things from marketing that is always needed. So
fair. And then Raheem, would you tell us a little bit yourself as well?
Sure. My name is Raheem Amer. I'm with Devon Self Storage. We are a property management company that specializes in conversions, acquisitions, and true third-party management. Looking forward to this call. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So I guess let's start with some of the basics. And before we kind of jump into this, let's talk about some of the just top priorities, right, from your manager's perspectives. And I think from each of your experiences, from Devon, from previous years of self-storage before that, or Christina, like you said, from each of these different avenues, and maybe we'll start with ladies first, Christina. What are some top priorities of your managers? What on a daily basis? What are those, couple things that they have to do?
So honestly, the biggest thing is the sales process, right? And following up with any of the leads that they have in their pipeline. So whether it's a reservation or an inquiry that comes in that day, or if it's something that's been in the system for a couple days that they need to follow up with and make sure that that person's going to come in and rent. I think really the top priority is really closing the sales and getting the rentals.
Awesome. And Raheem, I'm guessing you're nodding your head, so I'm guessing you're in complete agreement. Is there any other tidbits and additional things you want to add to that?
Yeah, we have a process called 3 C's. When we hire a manager, we tell them, hey, focus on these 3 C's. Number 1 is close, number 2 is clean, and number 3 is collect. So those are our 3 C's. So the first priority of every manager is, as soon as the lead comes in, how fast are you closing that lead? How do you get them into your property, and how do you close that rental? When you're not closing, you're cleaning. You're looking in the CRM, you're trying to figure out which units have moved out, which units are available, which units do you need to clean, how does the property look, all of those things. You're focused on those, so getting ready for the next close. And when you're not doing either one of those 2 things, then you're focusing on collecting. Going after those people that, especially in this current environment where occupancies are reaching extreme high levels, you want to make sure that you're getting every dollar from every unit. So if you have a unit that's just sitting there collecting, customers not, giving us the money, we're calling them, we're chasing them down, we're going through the auction process, so we get them back in. So again, going back to, so we can close on the next customer.
And I think you guys both hit on a couple of really good things. I kind of want to talk about one is the leads, and you said conversions. And Raheem, I've never heard the 3 C's, so actually that was a good little tip that I think a couple people will probably walk away with. I know I will. But the response times. So when you talk about leads, if I'm a lead and I come into your property or a reservation, however it comes in, can you guys kind of talk about some of the response times, or maybe like internal SLAs that you guys might have set up? And Raheem, I'll start with you on this one. Do you guys have a set, this is the process, or is it depending on this resource or depending on a lead or a reservation? Like, what kind of things are set in place for you guys there?
Yeah, one of the things that we teach as part of the process is, as soon as the lead comes in, we're trying to get them on the phone with the manager live within 10 to 15 minutes. That's our stretch goal, right? One of the things when we experimented, we found out is you want the customer to stop their shopping process, right? So if they have reached out and they're asking a question, we want to get them on the phone. We want to answer their question. We want to stop their rental process so they can come into your property and finish the rental, right? So those 10 to 15 minutes is extremely crucial. We see, as soon as you pass that 15-minute mark, you see a huge decline in conversion rates. So that's one of the things that we teach our team and we focus on.
Cool. Christina, do you want to kind of elaborate any additional, or are you just like going, yep, done?
No, I mean, I completely agree with that. Like that 15-minute mark has always kind of been the standard that we've used over the years. And it's, I mean, it really is true. Whoever really gets to that person first, if they're submitting multiple reservations in different places, is likely going to end up being the one that gets a sale.
So from a SiteLink term, right? CRM, customer relationship management, was the term, or module, I think, actually, now I'm saying this out loud. So CRM module is the button that you see in SiteLink. People probably have different names, right? Drip campaigns, whatever it might be in that aspect. Christina, I guess from some of your clients today, or even from your past experiences, what are some of the just high level must-haves that you have to have in place? That you have, that, like you said, you have to have these 15 minutes. So when a reservation comes in or an inquiry, what are some instant things that you've already put in place at SiteLink or in the SiteLink CRM module for your operators?
Sure, there are, so from a leads reservation standpoint, it's really important to have that initial email follow-up that you can send out. Hopefully, if they're reserving online, they're getting that initial confirmation directly from the website that they've submitted their reservation, but then you can have one in your CRM ready to go so that if the manager picks up the phone and calls that customer and they don't answer, you can have an email that you can immediately send out to them to follow up. And then we always recommend having a couple additional follow-up emails scheduled until either the move-in date is scheduled for that person or you're able to get in touch with them. But you wanna be able to continually, as you said, it's almost like a drip campaign of like constantly staying in front of that potential customer until they move in. And it's really interesting. I did a reservation at a very large operator yesterday, just out of sheer curiosity because they changed their process and I wanted to see how it was working. And I got an email today that specifically said that I'm totally stealing this. And it said, trying to confirm your reservation. And in the email, it basically said, if you don't call to confirm your reservation because of high occupancy, if you don't call us today, your unit will no longer be reserved. So it was getting that sense of urgency that like, you need to pick up the phone, you need to call us now. And like Raheem said, occupancy levels are at an all-time high. So how can you create that sense of urgency if somebody's not picking up the phone and you need to send them an email or a text message?
Interesting. That is a good little one-liner. You have that initial, like, if I'm Raheem's manager, I'm probably calling within 10, 15 minutes and emailing, right, per the policy here. But having that initial, like, how else can I get Jim to respond to that kind of thing? Like, what else can I put in that? So you talked a little bit about, urgency, right? High occupancy and where we are and urgency. How often then, like Raheem and Christina, I guess, how often are you then, if I'm the prospect in this example, are you sending me something? I put in an inquiry today or a reservation today. How often am I now getting a touch base from, I guess, one of your managers, Raheem?
I'll take that. So we do three calls in 3 days, trying to get in touch with them. And then we have a 3, 5, and 7. There's a drip campaign on the 3rd day, 5 day, and 7 day. That's more email. And if there's ever an appointment, as Christina said, we also have a reminder email the day before, reminding them that tomorrow you promised you're going to be here at 10 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever kind of thing, right? Just informing them about it.
Sure. So I think it was really interesting to me is that you guys have very similar policies and mindsets to like how can I get this person in front of me or into the property as fast as possible or onto a phone with one of my agents. And Christina, you were talking about some of the text and terms that you're doing. And then Raheem, you were just talking about how you have different things on different dates. What type of messaging are you sending to Jim on like the 1st day versus the 3rd or 5th? Like, are you changing the importance? Are you changing some text in the form? Or like, what kind of information is changing? Or are you just saying the same message because it's just get you in the door as fast as possible?
No, yeah, there's an urgency, right? The urgency sort of escalates as we go by, right? So as we get closer to 7 days, and depends on, again, there's a campaign that's initiated by the manager, right? So it's click, click, click. So they know, if you're looking at a 10, Jim, you're looking at a 10 by 10, and I don't have any 10 by 10, it's my last 10 by 10, and I have 2 other people that are asking about it. They might get something that's a little bit more urgent, similar to what Christina just talked about. Right, and if I have 20 of those 10 by 10s, you might get a little bit more of a slow play.
Okay. So within SiteLink, and I think James can kind of take on this a little bit more, what's interesting to me is that if Jim, the prospect, makes a reservation, what's neat is that you guys have made all these different forms and letters off that one reservation task, right? So within the CRM module, you can choose reservation needed by or reservation placed by, and then modify and create different things, which I think is really interesting. Christina, what kind of things are you? I love this new term, though, the large operator added to it, just to kind of push a little bit more. Do you have like a one last hurrah kind of thing, or anything you put on like the day 7 or day 8 where it's just kind of like now it turns into like a follow up for the manager? Or is there any kind of like text you can add into that to like see if you can get the prospect to sign?
So typically, like Raheem was saying, like you create that different levels of sense of urgency along the way. So the final email that would go out probably about a week later, most people, at least from the research I've done, make their decision within a week of making their reservation. People are not they're not looking months and months in advance. You get a handful of those people, but the majority of them are making a decision pretty quickly. So by that last email, it's kind of like that, creating that high sense of urgency of, are you going to move in? If you're not, your reservation's really no longer, but like your reservation's pretty much available for 7 days. After that, all bets are off. Right? We might have a unit for you, we might not.
Well, but I think, like you said too, in this high occupancy and this high demand, I think I can only hold it for so long, right? You have to make a call. So I think that's really interesting. So with these tasks and when these things, and I think you guys are both kind of alluding to the path you're using, but how are you dividing the responsibilities from Christina, the manager, versus Raheem, the DM, or area manager, or different people? Like, is Raheem doing all of the work and sending these things out, or is the corporate office doing everything, or how are you guys dividing and conquering kind of that process?
Our managers are really the ones that are responsible for sending them out. So we go in, we schedule we create the emails, we schedule them in the CRM scheduler, and then when they pop up in their daily reminders every day, they go in, and the manager at the store level is really responsible for that. And mostly that's because we want them to know what's going on at their store. And we want them to know how many leads they have and who's coming in, and that it just creates a better customer experience when the person that they're talking to, when they get that phone call or walk through the door, knows what's going on with their rental.
Okay, yeah. And Raheem, I see you nodding, so I'm guessing you and Christina seem similar.
Yeah, very similar. On the corporate level, we have a team that's sort of dedicated to creating the documents and inputting it in all the sites, and then the site managers utilize, depending on what the occurrence is, what the need is, they utilize those different CRM events. But so one team creates it, the frontline team is the one that's executing it. So okay. That's how we sort of divide and conquer. One other tidbit I would add on is, especially when I joined SiteLink 2 years ago, and I know we've been, Devon had been on SiteLink for a long period of time. There was one thing that wasn't turned on, and it sort of blew my mind that we had this ability, we did not, is the ability for SiteLink to contact you when their lead comes through. There's, and I found out over time that there's, when we acquire new properties, some of these operators don't even have that turned on yet, right? So as soon as the lead comes through, you get a call notification that, hey, there's a lead, so that way you can jump on that call right away versus calling them 2 hours, 3 hours later when you get back into the office.
I think that's a really good insight. That's actually really cool. Nice. So you guys were just talking about divide and conquering a little bit of like the corporate office does the creation and the forms and those kind of things. Can you guys maybe unpack a little bit about why a form looks a certain way, or what is formatting, or the look and feel, and maybe Christina, you can start with this one just because you're marketing, right? Like that's kind of your baby. But can you just kind of unpack maybe what are the important things to you in that? Like why does it have to look a certain way or format a certain way, or what data needs to be in there?
So I don't think it's so much about having to look a certain way, but making sure that it is what it's communicating is effective, and that all of your forms look uniform and look consistent, so that when somebody's getting them, they know exactly who it's coming from. Jim, I'm extremely into branding and consistency and creating that visual element of who you are. And I know branding isn't something that the storage industry loves to talk about, but it's really about creating the consistency so that when you get those emails, you know exactly who it's coming from, so that they're all looking the same, using the same types of language, and communicating essentially all the information that a customer needs to know about the unit that they rented, or what other policies there are at your facility if you're sending emails out after they've already moved in, and making sure that your brand is kind of consistent across all of them.
And Raheem, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, just the same thing, right? Consistent brand, consistent messaging. SiteLink has this great ability of using HTML, so just making sure that there's somebody that's looking at how that document is going to look when it actually hits a customer. So.
It creates trust and credibility for you as a company with the customer when everything's clean and consistent. So,
Agreed.
Love that. So I guess let's look at the last 6 months, right? You guys have used this drip campaign CRM module and with leads, with reservations, with that, and now you're looking back at like effectiveness is maybe not the right term. How are you using some of the data that comes out of the CRM function to inform business decisions? You know, Raheem, you were talking about, you know, a 3-5 day system. I'm guessing that was probably a great policy, but maybe you've shifted it over time of certain days or certain timeframes. And, you know, Christina, you talked about after about a week, you know, typically a prospect is making a decision. Like, how are you using some of those data points to help make other business decisions for your operators?
Raheem, you want to start with this one?
Sure, I'll take that one. Yeah, no, I mean, you know, same thing. That's how we came up with the 3-5-7. We tried it in different time frames. We had a A and B testing on trying to see, okay, hey, if you send it out on these times, what happens? If you send it out on these times, what happens? So we picked different days, different times, different dates, and we found out that this worked the best for us on the return of on the investment that we were doing. So those are some of the thought process that come through. There's another one that we were just in the process of that we just launched this year in 2021 is the referral program. So we've sort of automated those, and you know, every quarter we're sending out an email to people, you know, of our current customers, going, hey, if you are interested and if you refer people, we will give you X amount, and you know, you can share this message on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on Twitter, and whatever social media. And if anybody comes through these things, we will give you credit. So we tested it out in 5 stores. We had a 20% return. And as you know, referral is just free, right? So so now we've just launched it this month across all of our portfolio of stores. But that was some of the stuff that came through that back and forth research and trying to see what's happening and looking at it through the CRM system.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I love that A/B testing. I haven't, shockingly, that's something that we haven't done, and that's I'm stealing that. I'm stealing that. So.
Yeah, we always do that. We test some stuff at some sites and another program on other sites to see, okay, which one is getting us the best return.
Yeah, shockingly, I do that. We do that with our websites and with everything else, but we haven't done it with the CRM letters. So I love that.
Yeah, I think that's really neat. So I think out of the box, it seems like you guys have very similar mindsets in the effectiveness and the importance of these prospects and leads and getting something out to these people as fast as possible. How else are you guys using CRM that maybe people wouldn't think about, right? Because everyone's thinking right now is like, get this person in the door, reserve, get information, follow-ups, and that. Are there other ways that you're using this tool in normal ways, I guess is kind of my thought?
So we use it a lot post move-in for a number of different things. So like Raheem was saying, for our referral program, for reviews. So reviews are such a big part of driving additional traffic through the web that the sooner you can get to somebody after they've moved in to leave a review, the more likely you're going to get that review. So we use them for that. We use them for other holidays. So if your office is closed, communicating out to your customers that an office might be closed so they can't come in and pay, but they can still pay online. And then we've used it for like emergency situations when there was a fire or a flood or something on a property. And so we were able to quickly create an email and send it out to all non-affected customers, so that those that were affected, we were able to get in touch with, and they were able to get in to call the facility, so that it wasn't when you have 400 or 500 people trying to call your property at once to find out what's going on, your phone lines are just going to be crazy. And so being able to communicate quickly to people that like, hey, your stuff wasn't affected, so leave the phone lines open for everybody that we need to talk to.
That sounds great.
Those are just
we did similarly. You know, we also use it for auto pay customers that are about to fall out of auto pay, or people that are not on auto pay, especially during COVID. When COVID hit last year, we actually jumped from 28% to 68% by following a process going, hey, you're not on auto pay, you don't want to leave your house, you don't want to come in and make a payment, why don't we get you on auto pay? So we were able to do a drip campaign on that. Same thing with insurance. So those are some of the other things that we use it for besides leads and everything else.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, I thought of some of those, Mother Nature type things, right? Like hurricanes in the East Coast. That's kind of where I would go. I didn't think about, floods or impacted customers versus non-impacted customers, or, other aspects in that. So I think that's really cool. The other one that I had was about CRM. Was you spoke a little bit about formatting with HTML versus just kind of Word. Do you guys have any experiences with like making sure it goes to the customer when like an attachment or embedded or anything like that? That would be tips for the people who attend.
Yeah, so one thing, this is actually one of the tests that we did. We sent people as an attachment, and we also sent it as part of an email. We found out that the email had a better read return than when you send it as an attachment. So we've sort of gone away from sending any attachments. We like to send it as an embed.
Yeah.
So I love this. We need to ask Raheem more like A/B testing. Have you tried this before?
I mean, that's really just general email marketing standards. Is anything that is in the body of the email is going to have a better return rate than something that's attached, especially when you think about how many people check their emails on their phones. Most people don't want to deal with having to download an attachment when they're looking at something on their phone. They just want to be able to read what that message is and move on. So
that's a good one. The other one I had was about holidays. How do you guys use them for like holidays or special things? I remember there's an ability, James shared with me before, where you can kind of like set up something and then use it. Have you guys done that before? Like a template of sorts?
Yeah, you can do that with all kinds of things. So even though there are trigger dates in the setup, you can do trigger dates just based on a random date. So even if you're hosting, like if you're doing community marketing stuff and you're hosting an event or you're doing a toy drive or something, like you can do drip campaigns based on, sending something out on April 21st. So that's, you can set up for holidays to be able to send out right around that holiday based on the date to communicate out what your office hours might be.
Nice. I think that is a fantastic little tip at the end. Okay, I think maybe there's a question. If not, but I'm going to pass it back to Matt, who's going to kind of close this up and kind of give us a little bit more information about kind of the next steps too.
Yeah, so we are right at time, but I will say we got a lot of good questions, so I'll be following up with you guys afterwards. We will definitely chase down some answers for you guys. One though in particular came up multiple times, so I do want to throw this to the audience while we have everyone. So when you guys were talking about kind of the forms and the fact that Raheem, you had mentioned, HTML is very powerful, but some of the pushback we got from some of the questions is also complex and challenging. And so, if you're a larger operator, you might have some dedicated headcount or resources to doing that kind of thing. But if you're smaller, you might not have that luxury. So how have you guys, thought, or how would you think about that? Or how would you recommend maybe a smaller operator who doesn't have HTML expertise about going around to creating these effective HTML forms and the ways you described?
So I'll give you two options. Option number one is just call one of us. We'll be glad to help. Christina, I'm speaking on your behalf here. But yeah, no, just call us. We have a department. We'll help you set one up if that's all that's stopping you from moving forward. But again, I guess the next call also has James. James is the one that actually helped us set ours up. So he's a great resource for it. If you can't touch any of those, the third option would be Fever. Fever.com. There's people on there that you can bring on for $10-15, and they'll set it up for you.
Yeah, great options.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's ways people can do it from different tools, which I think is great. I mean, there's also companies that have also helped with setting up templates like that. So use the resources who are on this panel, definitely.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, guys. Well, like I said, a couple other questions had come in, so I'll follow up with you guys directly via email after today's webinar concludes. But more than anything, I just want to stop and say thank you to Raheem and Christina. I think I speak for everybody when this is a phenomenal webinar. A lot of very good information from you guys. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us and just kind of share your expertise with the room.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having. Appreciate it.
Very welcome. So it's our pleasure. So a couple quick reminders before we wrap up. As Raheem just alluded to, this is actually not the conclusion of this little series of CRM discussions. Next week we have a webinar on Tuesday from 1 to 1:30 p.m. Central Time. We'll be sending links to register for that and a follow-up email later today if you want to participate. And that's with James Reneff, our corporate trainer that Raheem had alluded to. So, HTML, that's a great one. But if anything else you heard today is of interest to you and you want to learn how to configure it or use it, etc., I would highly encourage you to spend some time and join that webinar, bring your questions. But we also have the Schoolable training videos that we had created as well. And so those are really valuable. It's over an hour's worth of content on CRM alone for you to learn how to configure and use this set of capabilities. So give those things a look. But that does conclude today's webinar. So if you guys have any other questions that come up after the webinar concludes, we do have an email address set up. It's webinars@storable.com. And feel free to send it over our way and we'll get you guys connected to the right people to chase down some answers to those questions. But I just want to say to everybody out there, stay healthy, stay safe. We appreciate you guys attending today and hope you all have a great day.